Good afternoon. My name is Angelie Caster, and I think this is a video assignment I'm supposed to do. Okay. Um, The question is, I have to answer as what do I think language means to me. And to answer that question, I think my experiences and your experiences are somewhat similar, Professor. When I moved here to the United States permanently, I moved in when I was 12 and 13 years old, and I also had experiences living here and going to school here for a short while before, but that was, yeah, I think that kind of counts. So like in 2012, I also came here, but I was in Florida, and I was like 9 years old, and I went to school, or the English an English speaking school, and I didn't really have that experience of having to be outside in regular classes. I think I was put in an English program for English learners with people, but I was excelling because I was 9 years old. It was easier for me to capture, to kind of like excel at language, and I was excelling in my language and in my assignments and stuff like that. And I believe I was placed into more of regular classroom of regular schedule and regular students. I didn't really spend a lot of time in the English learner program, but and that time I still had like little activities where I had time with my English learner folks and stuff like that, where I had like a period in a class where I had to do the English learner programs, but the learners program, but I was placed immediately into the mainstream after a few months. And it didn't, well, at 9 years old it wasn't that bad because I captured language quicker. But when I was 12 years old and I moved here, which is like a few years after, and I moved permanently, and then after being home from 9 years old to 12, I have forgotten some of the English I learned, which is weird. I have forgotten some of the languages I learned. So then when I moved here, I had to go back to integrating into the more of the English language classrooms, and I didn't really struggle. But at the same time, I felt like language had betrayed me because I had learned this language. I spoke this language. I spoke this language so well that when I went home after living here for 6 months at 9 years old, all I could speak was English. I had forgotten my main language. I had forgotten how to speak. My primary language is Haitian Creole. So I was raised speaking Haitian Creole and French. When I came here and studied in 2012, and for 6 months when I was here in school, all I spoke was English. So when I went home, I had forgotten how to speak Haitian Creole, and I also forgotten how to speak French. I had to learn how to speak French again, and I had to learn how to speak Haitian Creole again. And like I remember when I went to school at 9 years old, and I went back to school, my friends would look at me like, "Oh, does she understand what we're doing?" Like I could read French, I could read what's going on. I can understand someone speaking it. I can understand someone speaking in Haitian Creole to me, but I couldn't physically speak it myself to someone else and have that like kind of communication. And that's the thing that's fascinating about language, is that like anything trauma trauma triggers that part of our body where language doesn't work effectively. Because in 2012, the reason why I moved to the United States was because of the earthquake, and I was there for a long period of time without my parents, without my family, and that trauma caused me to block out that part of my brain that spoke Haitian Creole. And to like, it took me a minute, a good amount of time to really learn that language. Till this day, the same way I spoke French and Haitian Creole is not the same because I had to relearn that language at 9 years old again. Um, yeah, and then when I came here again for the second time, I had to also read because I forgot in English once again. I left English out the door after I spoke that language, and then I had to relearn English again and go through the system of learning English and being an English learner. And it was hard. It wasn't really hard, but it was somewhat hard because it took me I moved here and I was put in 8th grade. And I think after a year of being in the English learner classes, and I was excelling in my tests and my yearly English learning tests, I forgot how they're called, but I was excelling in them after a year. After that, like I was put into the mainstream classes, and I did not really struggle as much in the mainstream classes. It took me the first mainstream class I was put on was English. It wasn't English one in freshman year of college, and I was putting that. I was really excited. It took me a minute to understand what was going on and capture everything because the English learner classes were moving at a slower pace compared to the mainstream classes or mainstream classes where everything was just given to you and you took it, but it took me a minute to adjust to that kind of sense of getting into a mainstream class. But after kind of getting handle of it, I started to understand how to study to adjust to being in a mainstream class. So that's my point of language. I don't know if that makes all of this mumbo jumbo makes sense, but I had issues where language had betrayed me. So I think language is quite fascinating in a way. I feel like when it comes to language, it's just fascinating how trauma can trigger language to disappear and reappear at the same time. It just was fascinating to me. But yeah.